For 8 years, Maria Delgado had been invisible at the nation's most secure intelligence facility, scrubbing toilets and emptying trash while analysts discussed classified operations around her. What none of them realized was that she possessed a photographic memory and had been recording every secret conversation in her mind. When her arrogant supervisor finally decided to publicly humiliate her intelligence, he discovered he had been underestimating a former Army intelligence analyst who knew more state secrets than anyone in the building. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of Northpoint Security Complex cast harsh shadows across the polished marble floors as Maria Delgado pushed her cleaning cart through the sterile corridors at 5:47 a.m. At 41, she had mastered the art of being overlooked. Shoulders slightly hunched, eyes downcast, moving with the deliberate pace of someone who understood that being noticed meant trouble. For 8 years, she had been nothing more than background noise, the Hispanic cleaning lady who sanitized their workspaces and emptied their classified document shredders. "Morning, Maria," called out Ben Kowalski, the only person in the entire facility who bothered to acknowledge her existence. This 62-year-old head custodian had worked at Northpoint for 15 years, and his weathered face carried the wisdom of someone who had seen countless employees come and go. He was loading supplies near the main elevator bank, the same area where Maria had overheard her first classified conversation 8 years ago. "Morning, Ben," she replied softly, her voice barely audible over the distant hum of ventilation systems and secure communication equipment. Ben was different from the others. Respectful, kind, with calloused hands that spoke of honest work. He reminded her of the good people she used to serve alongside, back when she wore a different uniform and carried a different name. Maria had arrived at Northpoint 8 years ago with nothing but forged custodial references and a desperate need to disappear. The Human Resources Department had barely glanced at her application, a middle-aged Latina woman seeking janitorial work at a government intelligence facility. She was hired within a week, subjected to a basic background check that revealed exactly what she wanted it to reveal: nothing. It was perfect camouflage. As she methodically mopped the gleaming floors, Maria absorbed every conversation that drifted through the air around her. Analysts discussing foreign intelligence assessments, supervisors debating operational security protocols, administrators complaining about budget allocations for classified programs. She absorbed every word, every technical detail, every name and code designation. Like a digital recorder, her mind captured and stored information with perfect fidelity. Old habits from her previous life died hard. The Counterintelligence Operations Division housed over 200 personnel across 4 secure floors, each handling intelligence worth millions of dollars and potentially affecting national security. Maria knew their organizational chart by heart, not from reading personnel directories, but from months of listening to interdepartmental communications and power struggles. She had once commanded similar intelligence operations, back when her name was Senior Analyst Elena Santos, and she was one of the Army's most decorated intelligence officers. That was before the setup, before the fabricated evidence, before her entire career was systematically destroyed by corrupt officials who needed someone to blame for their own security failures. Senior Analyst Elena Santos had been officially declared a security risk and discharged under suspicious circumstances. Maria Delgado had been born from her ashes. Assistant Director Trevor Hamilton's voice echoed through the main analysis floor, interrupting her thoughts. "Make sure that area is properly sanitized," he commanded, pointing to a section she had already cleaned twice. "We have congressional oversight visits this week, and I won't have our facility looking substandard." Hamilton embodied everything wrong with the intelligence community's privileged insider network. Son of a defense contractor, CEO, Georgetown graduate who had never served in actual field operations, carried by family connections and political influence rather than competence. At 38, he commanded respect he hadn't earned and wielded authority like a weapon against anyone he considered beneath his station. "Yes, sir," Maria replied, keeping her eyes fixed on the floor. She had learned long ago that making direct eye contact with Hamilton only invited additional harassment. His condescending tone carried the casual cruelty of someone who had never experienced real consequence for his actions. "And Maria," Hamilton continued, his voice dripping with familiar disdain, "make sure you don't leave any cleaning residue on the computer equipment. These systems handle more sensitive information than you could comprehend in 10 lifetimes." Several junior analysts within earshot smirked at his comment. Maria's hands tightened slightly on the mop handle, but she remained silent and invisible. Hamilton had no idea he was speaking to someone who had once analyzed intelligence data that determined the outcomes of international conflicts. Someone who had briefed Pentagon officials on threats he couldn't even pronounce correctly. Casey Turner, Hamilton's eager protege and social media-obsessed intern, approached with his ever-present smartphone. "Mr. Hamilton, want to see the video I took of the new analyst failing his first security clearance interview?" "Always," Hamilton grinned with predatory satisfaction. "I love documenting people discovering their limitations. Keeps everyone grounded in reality." Maria continued her cleaning routine, but her enhanced hearing, trained through years of intelligence work, picked up every word. She had noticed Turner's compulsive need to film everything, always searching for content that would generate views and engagement on his personal social media channels. He documented every embarrassing moment, every professional failure, every humiliation with the enthusiasm of someone who had never experienced genuine hardship or consequence. As the morning progressed, Maria observed the toxic culture that had developed under Hamilton's leadership. He and his inner circle mocked junior personnel, berated administrative staff for minor infractions, and treated support employees like invisible servants. The entire facility had become a reflection of Hamilton's character, arrogant, entitled, and systematically cruel to anyone without political protection. But Maria also noticed something else that Hamilton missed entirely. The veteran analysts, the experienced field officers, the seasoned intelligence professionals who remembered when their work focused on protecting national security rather than advancing personal careers, they watched Hamilton with barely concealed disgust. They recognized incompetence wrapped in privilege, and they were documenting his failures just as carefully as Maria was. Ben Kowalski approached her during the lunch break, his expression thoughtful. "Maria, you've been here longer than most of the analysts. Ever think about doing something different with your skills?" The question caught her completely off guard. "This job suits me fine, Ben. Steady work, good benefits." "It's just," Ben paused, studying her face carefully, "you seem overqualified for custodial work. The way you listen when people discuss technical operations, the way you organize your cleaning routes around facility security protocols, reminds me of someone I used to know in the military, an intelligence analyst." Maria felt ice form in her stomach. "I wouldn't know anything about that kind of work, Ben." Ben nodded slowly, his experienced eyes holding hers for a moment longer than comfortable. "Of course not. Just saying, sometimes the best people end up hiding in plain sight. Circumstances force good people into situations that don't reflect their true capabilities." As the afternoon shift approached, Maria finished her assigned areas and prepared to clock out. But Hamilton's voice stopped her near the main security checkpoint. "Delgado," he called out sharply, "tomorrow morning, 7 sharp, we're hosting a special demonstration for some visiting Pentagon officials. Make sure this entire floor is spotless." "Yes, sir." Hamilton's smile carried a cold edge that made Maria's survival instincts activate. "And Delgado, wear something presentable. Can't have you embarrassing our facility in front of important people who understand the value of maintaining professional standards." The other staff members within earshot chuckled, but Maria detected something else in Hamilton's tone. A hint of calculated cruelty that suggested tomorrow would be different. Special. He was planning something that went beyond routine humiliation. That night, Maria sat in her modest apartment, staring at a photograph hidden in her bedroom closet. It showed a younger version of herself in an Army dress uniform, receiving the Defense Intelligence Achievement Medal from a general. Senior analyst Elena Santos, decorated intelligence officer, strategic assessment specialist, one of the first Latina women to break significant barriers in military intelligence operations. The woman in the photograph looked confident, accomplished, unbreakable. The woman staring back from her bathroom mirror looked tired, worn down by 8 years of deliberate invisibility and systematic diminishment. But beneath the surface, Elena Santos remained alive, waiting. Maria had spent 8 years learning Hamilton's routines, his weaknesses, his corrupt network of associates. She knew about his family's defense contracting connections, his mediocre performance evaluations that had been artificially inflated, and his habit of taking credit for intelligence assessments produced by subordinates. She had been gathering information not for revenge but for survival, and lately, for justice. Tomorrow, Hamilton had promised a demonstration in front of Pentagon officials. He had no idea that he was about to awaken something that had been dormant for 8 years, something far more dangerous than he could comprehend. The question wasn't whether Maria Delgado could continue hiding her true capabilities. The question was whether Elena Santos was ready to reclaim her identity and expose the corruption that had destroyed so many careers, including her own. 8 years earlier, senior analyst Elena Santos had been seated in a secure briefing room at Fort Meade, reviewing intelligence assessments that would determine the fate of an undercover operation in Eastern Europe. Her photographic memory had made her invaluable to Army intelligence. She could absorb vast amounts of classified data, cross-reference it mentally, and produce comprehensive threat assessments that had prevented countless security breaches. "Santos, your analysis of the Prague situation saved 12 operatives," Colonel David Brennan had told her that final day. "The Defense Intelligence Agency wants to fast-track your promotion to supervisory analyst. You'd be running your own department within 2 years." Elena had smiled, proud of the career she'd built through merit and dedication. She specialized in identifying patterns that others missed, connecting seemingly unrelated intelligence fragments into coherent threat assessments. Her colleagues called her the computer, because of her ability to recall specific details from thousands of classified documents with perfect accuracy. But that same photographic memory had also made her the perfect witness to something she was never supposed to see. It started with inconsistencies in weapons tracking reports, small discrepancies that most analysts would have dismissed as clerical errors. Elena's mind, however, automatically flagged patterns, and she began noticing that certain high-value military equipment was being reported as destroyed in field operations, while identical equipment was simultaneously appearing in foreign intelligence photographs weeks later. The deeper she investigated, the more disturbing the pattern became. Someone with access to classified weapon shipment schedules was systematically diverting advanced military technology to unauthorized buyers. The operation was sophisticated, involving falsified destruction reports, corrupted shipping manifests, and carefully coordinated timing that suggested insider knowledge at the highest levels. Elena had followed proper protocol, documenting her findings and reporting them through official channels to her immediate supervisor, Colonel Mitchell Carver, Trevor Hamilton's father, the man who would ultimately orchestrate her destruction. "Santos, these are serious allegations," Colonel Carver had said, reviewing her meticulously documented evidence. "I'll need you to compile everything you have and present it to the Joint Intelligence Review Board next week. This could be the biggest security breach in decades." Elena had worked 18-hour days, building an airtight case with financial records, communication intercepts, shipping documentation, and photographic evidence. Her presentation was scheduled for Tuesday morning. She never made it to that meeting. On Monday evening, Elena's security clearance was suspended pending investigation into allegations that she had been selling classified information to foreign governments. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Bank deposits that matched the exact amounts of the diverted weapons sales, encrypted communications with known foreign intelligence contacts, and classified documents found in her personal computer that she had never accessed. Within 72 hours, senior analyst Elena Santos had been discharged from the Army under suspicion of treason, her career destroyed, her reputation permanently tainted. The investigation into weapons trafficking was quietly closed due to insufficient evidence. But Elena's photographic memory had recorded every detail of Colonel Carver's reactions during her initial report, every subtle expression and verbal response that indicated foreknowledge. She realized she had been set up by the very person she had trusted to help her expose the corruption. The beauty of Elena's memory was that it didn't just record facts, it recorded everything. Conversations, facial expressions, timing, context. As Maria Delgado, she had spent 8 years reconstructing the conspiracy from fragments overheard during her invisible custodial work. She learned that Colonel Carver had retired with full honors and moved directly into a lucrative consulting position with Apex Defense Solutions, the same company that had been receiving the diverted military equipment. His son Trevor had been fast-tracked into intelligence work, despite mediocre qualifications and a complete lack of field experience. More importantly, Maria discovered that the weapons trafficking operation had never stopped. It had simply become more sophisticated, with Trevor Hamilton now serving as a key facilitator. His position at Northpoint gave him access to shipping schedules, security protocols, and classified technology assessments that made the operation nearly undetectable. Over 8 years of careful listening, Maria had compiled a mental database that would make federal prosecutors weep with joy. She knew shipment dates, financial account numbers, communication codes, and the complete organizational structure of a conspiracy that had stolen hundreds of millions in military equipment. She knew that Trevor Hamilton personally approved shipping manifests for equipment that never reached its intended destinations. She had overheard him coordinating with Apex defense representatives, discussing delivery schedules and payment arrangements for weapons that were officially listed as destroyed in training exercises. She knew the names of corrupt officials in 3 different agencies, the bank account numbers used for illegal payments, and the specific procedures used to falsify documentation. Most importantly, she had identified the pattern of communication that occurred before each major weapons diversion. But Elena Santos had learned something else during her 8 years as Maria Delgado. Corruption thrived on the assumption that certain people were invisible, that their observations didn't matter, that their intelligence could be dismissed because of their perceived status. Every morning as she cleaned around Hamilton's desk, she listened to him discussing operations with casual arrogance, never imagining that the cleaning lady possessed the intelligence training to understand the significance of what he was revealing. Every afternoon, as she emptied trash bins containing shredded documents, she mentally reconstructed the information from partial fragments. Her photographic memory had become the perfect surveillance tool, recording every detail of conversations that Hamilton assumed were private. She knew his personal cell phone number, his private email password, his home address, and the location of his offshore financial accounts. Yesterday's conversation had been particularly revealing. Hamilton had been coordinating with someone he called the General, discussing a major equipment diversion scheduled for next week that would involve classified technology worth over $50 million. The timing coincided perfectly with the Pentagon official's visit he had mentioned. Maria realized that Hamilton's planned demonstration for tomorrow wasn't just about humiliating her. It was about establishing his authority and competence in front of Pentagon officials who would be approving the shipments he intended to steal. But Trevor Hamilton had made a critical error in his calculations. He assumed that Maria Delgado was exactly what she appeared to be, an uneducated cleaning lady with no understanding of the sophisticated operations occurring around her. Tomorrow, when Hamilton tried to demonstrate her intellectual limitations in front of Pentagon officials, he would discover that he had been conducting his illegal business in front of someone with perfect recall of every classified conversation, every illegal transaction, and every corrupt official in his network. Elena Santos had spent 8 years preparing for this moment, not knowing when it would come, but knowing that eventually her hidden identity would become her greatest weapon against the people who had destroyed her career and were continuing to betray national security. The invisible woman was about to become the most dangerous person in the building. Trevor Hamilton's corner office on the 3rd floor of Northpoint Security Complex reflected everything he believed about his own importance. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the facility's main courtyard. Mahogany furniture that cost more than most employees' annual salaries, and walls lined with framed photographs of himself shaking hands with senators, defense contractors, and military officials who had helped advance his undeserved career. At 38, Hamilton had never seen actual combat, never worked a genuine intelligence operation, and never earned a single promotion through merit. Yet he commanded the Counterintelligence Operations Division with the absolute authority of someone who confused inherited privilege with personal competence. His Georgetown MBA hung prominently behind his desk, though anyone who had worked with him quickly realized it represented networking connections rather than analytical intelligence. "Casey, get in here," Hamilton called to his eager protege, who immediately appeared with his smartphone already positioned for recording. Casey Turner was everything Hamilton loved in a subordinate, completely dependent on Hamilton's approval, willing to document and share any content that would enhance Hamilton's image, and too inexperienced to recognize the illegal activities occurring around him. "Yes, Mr. Hamilton," Casey replied, his 24-year-old enthusiasm barely contained. "I've got the footage from yesterday's analyst evaluation ready to upload." The guy completely crashed when asked about basic threat assessment protocols. It's going to get thousands of views. Hamilton smiled with predatory satisfaction. Casey's social media obsession had proven invaluable for maintaining Hamilton's reputation as a demanding but effective supervisor. The young man documented every professional failure, every embarrassing moment, every instance where employees failed to meet Hamilton's impossible standards. The constant threat of public humiliation kept personnel in line and reinforced Hamilton's authority. "Excellent work. But today we're going to create something special," Hamilton announced, leaning back in his leather chair. "Something that will remind everyone in this facility about the importance of understanding your place in the hierarchy." Casey's eyes lit up with anticipation. "What did you have in mind?" Hamilton stood and walked to his window, looking down at the main floor where Maria could be seen methodically cleaning workstations. "Our custodial staff has gotten a bit too comfortable lately. I've noticed them lingering around workstations, probably trying to eavesdrop on conversations they couldn't possibly understand. Time to provide a reality check." The truth was more calculated than Hamilton admitted. His father, Colonel Mitchell Carver, had specifically warned him about becoming complacent with security protocols. "Son, the biggest threats aren't always obvious," the colonel had advised during their monthly dinner at the exclusive Potomac Club. "Sometimes the people you notice least are the ones paying the most attention." Hamilton had dismissed his father's paranoia as old military thinking, but lately he had noticed Maria's efficiency seemed almost too perfect. She cleaned around workstations with precision timing that ensured she was always nearby during important conversations. Her routes through the facility followed patterns that maximized her exposure to classified discussions. Yesterday, he had caught her pausing near his office door during a particularly sensitive phone call with Apex Defense Solutions. "Here's what we're going to do," Hamilton explained to Casey, his voice carrying the excitement of someone planning elaborate cruelty. "Tomorrow morning, when the Pentagon officials arrive for their inspection, we're going to conduct a little educational demonstration about intellectual capacity and knowing your limitations." Casey was already recording, recognizing that Hamilton's spontaneous speeches often produced the most engaging content. "How exactly?" "We're going to invite our cleaning lady to participate in a security briefing. Ask her to analyze some basic intelligence data, maybe identify some simple threat patterns. When she inevitably fails, we'll have documented proof that certain people lack the cognitive capacity for complex analytical work." The plan was perfect in Hamilton's mind. It would humiliate Maria in front of Pentagon officials, reinforce proper hierarchical boundaries, and provide Casey with viral content that would generate thousands of views. Most importantly, it would demonstrate Hamilton's leadership to visiting officials who controlled budget allocations for operations he intended to exploit. What Hamilton didn't realize was that his office wasn't as soundproof as he believed. Maria's enhanced hearing, trained through years of intelligence work, could detect conversations through the thin walls when she positioned herself correctly during her cleaning routine. Every word of his planning session was being recorded in her perfect memory. "The beauty of this approach," Hamilton continued, warming to his subject, "is that it serves multiple purposes. We establish clear intellectual boundaries. We provide educational content for social media, and we demonstrate proper facility management to our Pentagon visitors." Casey nodded enthusiastically, already envisioning the engagement metrics. "Should I coordinate with security to make sure we have good camera angles?" "Absolutely. I want every moment documented. This is going to be a masterclass in understanding professional limitations." Hamilton's confidence was absolute because he had successfully executed similar humiliation campaigns against other employees who had gotten too comfortable or asked too many questions. Last month, he had publicly challenged a maintenance worker to explain cybersecurity protocols, creating a viral video that reinforced everyone's understanding of their place in the facility's hierarchy. But Hamilton's cruelty served a darker purpose than simple entertainment. Each public humiliation sent a clear message to other employees. Don't pay too much attention, don't ask uncomfortable questions, and definitely don't challenge the existing power structure. Fear kept people in line, and embarrassment kept them quiet. The irony was devastating. Hamilton was planning to humiliate someone for intellectual limitations while conducting illegal weapons trafficking operations that had already compromised national security for 8 years. His arrogance had blinded him to the possibility that the person he considered least threatening might actually be the most dangerous. "Sir," Casey asked, reviewing footage on his phone, "what if she actually knows something? I mean, she's been here for 8 years. Maybe she's picked up more than we think?" Hamilton laughed with genuine amusement. "Casey, that woman cleans toilets for a living. She empties trash and mops floors. The idea that she could understand classified intelligence operations is absolutely ridiculous. Tomorrow we're going to prove that some barriers exist for very good reasons." As the afternoon progressed, Hamilton made final preparations for his demonstration, coordinating with Pentagon officials, arranging camera equipment, and ensuring maximum attendance for what he expected to be Maria's complete professional humiliation. He had no idea that the woman he planned to embarrass had spent 8 years accumulating evidence of his illegal activities, memorizing every detail of his corrupt network, and waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity to expose the truth. Tomorrow, Trevor Hamilton would discover that sometimes the people you underestimate most are the ones who understand exactly how to destroy you. That evening, Maria sat in her modest apartment, but her mind was operating like the most sophisticated intelligence database ever created. 8 years of careful observation had transformed her photographic memory into a weapon that could dismantle an entire corruption network with surgical precision. She closed her eyes and began her nightly ritual, mentally reviewing the classified information she had absorbed throughout the day. Unlike digital files that could be hacked, deleted, or corrupted, Maria's memory was absolutely secure and perfectly organized. Every conversation, every document fragment, every seemingly insignificant detail was cataloged with timestamp accuracy that would make federal prosecutors weep with gratitude. Operation Phantom Export, November 15, 2:47 p.m. Hamilton, had received a call from someone identified only as Phoenix. The conversation revealed shipment schedules for advanced radar components officially destined for Allied training exercises in Germany. Hamilton confirmed that the equipment would be redirected through Apex Defense Solutions to unnamed buyers in Eastern Europe. Payment: $47 million, split between offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Maria's mind automatically cross-referenced this with 17 previous conversations involving similar redirections. The pattern was consistent: military equipment reported as destroyed or lost in training exercises, while identical technology appeared in foreign intelligence photographs weeks later. The financial trail led directly to accounts controlled by the Hamilton family and their associates. Security breach documentation, October 23, 4:15 p.m. Hamilton had discussed specific weaknesses in Pentagon cybersecurity protocols with Rebecca Sterling, his inside accomplice in the procurement department. They had identified blind spots in the tracking system that allowed equipment to disappear from official records for up to 96 hours before triggering automatic investigation protocols. This window provided sufficient time to complete unauthorized transfers and falsify destruction reports. Maria's memory contained the exact technical specifications they had discussed, including system passwords, override codes, and the names of Pentagon officials who had been compromised or coerced into cooperation. Information that could expose security vulnerabilities affecting every military installation in the country. Financial network mapping, December 3, 11:32 a.m. During a particularly revealing phone conversation, Hamilton had coordinated with his banker at Meridian International Wealth Management, discussing the movement of $89 million through a network of shell companies designed to obscure the source of illegal weapons sales. Maria had memorized account numbers, routing codes, and the complete organizational structure of financial entities used to launder money from arms trafficking. The conversation had revealed that Hamilton's operation extended far beyond simple theft. They were systematically compromising military readiness by diverting cutting-edge technology to potential adversaries, while Pentagon officials unknowingly approved budgets for equipment that would never reach American forces. Personnel corruption database Maria's memory contained detailed profiles of every corrupt official in Hamilton's network. General Patricia Morse, who approved fictional training exercises that provided cover for equipment diversions. Congressman William Hayes, who ensured that oversight committees never investigated suspicious patterns in military procurement. Defense contractor CEO Michael Sterling, who coordinated the technical aspects of equipment modification and resale. She knew their communication methods, their personal vulnerabilities, and the specific bribes or threats that had secured their cooperation. Information that could dismantle political careers and result in treason charges for dozens of high-ranking officials. Technical Specifications Archive, 8 years of listening to classified briefings, had provided Maria with comprehensive knowledge of every advanced weapons system, surveillance technology, and cybersecurity protocol used by American intelligence agencies. She could describe the technical capabilities of equipment that hadn't been publicly acknowledged, explain the vulnerabilities of systems that enemies were actively trying to exploit, and identify the specific technologies that Hamilton's network had successfully stolen. This information made her simultaneously invaluable and incredibly dangerous. Any foreign intelligence service would pay millions for access to her memory, while American security agencies would do anything to protect what she knew. Communication intercepts. Maria's enhanced hearing had allowed her to record conversations that the participants believed were completely private. Hamilton's office phone calls, hallway discussions between corrupt officials, and even whispered conversations in supposedly secure areas. Her memory contained voice patterns, specific phrases, and contextual details that could serve as irrefutable evidence in criminal prosecutions. Most damaging were the recordings in her mind of Hamilton discussing the murder of Elena Santos. Not her actual death, but the systematic destruction of her career and identity, what Hamilton's father had called professional assassination. The conversations revealed that Colonel Carver had specifically targeted Elena because her intelligence capabilities posed an existential threat to their operation. Tomorrow's operation, based on conversations she had overheard, Maria knew that Hamilton's demonstration was coordinated with a major weapons diversion scheduled for next week. The Pentagon officials attending tomorrow's meeting would unknowingly approve shipment schedules for equipment worth over $200 million, technology that would never reach its intended destination. Hamilton planned to use tomorrow's humiliation of Maria to establish his authority and competence with Pentagon officials, ensuring their confidence in his operational oversight. He needed their trust to execute the largest theft in his network's history. But Maria had identified a critical vulnerability in Hamilton's plan. His arrogance had led him to schedule tomorrow's demonstration in the main briefing room, which was equipped with recording equipment for security purposes. Every word spoken during his planned humiliation would be automatically archived in classified government databases. The perfect storm. Maria realized that tomorrow represented a convergence of opportunities that might never occur again. Pentagon officials would be present to witness Hamilton's corruption firsthand. Casey Turner would be recording everything for social media, ensuring immediate public documentation. The facility's security systems would capture official evidence, and Hamilton's own arrogance would provide the opening she needed to reveal her true identity and capabilities. 8 years of preparation had led to this moment. Elena Santos had been destroyed by corruption and conspiracy, but Maria Delgado had spent every day since building an unassailable case against the people responsible. Tomorrow, when Hamilton tried to demonstrate her intellectual limitations, he would discover that he had been conducting his illegal operations under the surveillance of someone with perfect memory, comprehensive evidence, and nothing left to lose. The Invisible Woman was about to become the most visible threat to government corruption in decades. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The morning air at Northpoint Security Complex carried an unusual tension as Maria wheeled her cleaning cart into the main briefing room at 6:30 a.m. The space had been transformed overnight. Additional chairs arranged in theater-style seating, professional lighting equipment positioned for optimal visibility, and multiple camera angles that suggested this would be more than a routine Pentagon inspection. Maria's trained eyes immediately cataloged the tactical situation. 12 Pentagon officials would be attending, including Deputy Director of Defense Intelligence Sarah Mitchell and Procurement Oversight Commander General Robert Kane. Casey Turner had positioned 3 different recording devices around the room, ensuring comprehensive documentation from multiple angles. The facility's built-in security cameras were active, meaning everything would be automatically archived in classified government databases. "There she is," Hamilton's voice carried across the briefing room as he pointed directly at Maria, "our star performer for today's educational demonstration." Maria's survival instincts, honed by years of military training and 8 years of hiding, immediately recognized the predatory energy in the room. This wasn't a routine inspection. Hamilton had assembled an audience specifically to witness her public humiliation, and the presence of Pentagon officials meant the stakes were higher than ever. Ben Kowalski approached her with obvious concern etched across his weathered face. "Maria, something's not right here. Hamilton's been preparing this demonstration all week, and he specifically requested that you be present during the Pentagon briefing. That's never happened before." "I don't know what he's planning, Ben," Maria replied honestly, though her mind was already calculating defensive positions and exit strategies. Military training never completely disappeared, and Elena Santos was beginning to surface despite Maria's efforts to remain invisible. Casey Turner was adjusting his professional-grade camera equipment with unusual precision, checking angles and lighting like he was preparing for a broadcast rather than simple documentation. His excitement was barely contained, and several other junior staff members had gathered nearby, their expressions ranging from anticipation to uncomfortable recognition that they were about to witness something cruel. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hamilton announced as Pentagon officials began filing into the briefing room, "thank you for attending today's facility inspection. As requested, we've prepared a special demonstration that illustrates our commitment to maintaining appropriate security standards and professional boundaries." Deputy Director Mitchell took her seat in the front row, her expression neutral but attentive. General Kane positioned himself where he could observe both the presentation and the audience reaction. Maria recognized both officials from intelligence briefings she had attended 8 years ago, though they had no reason to remember senior analyst Elena Santos. Hamilton moved to the center of the room with the confident bearing of someone who had never experienced genuine consequence for his actions. Today's demonstration addresses a critical security concern that affects every classified facility in the government: the risk of unauthorized personnel gaining access to sensitive information through passive observation. Maria continued her cleaning routine, but every sense was hyper-aware. The briefing room's acoustics meant she could monitor conversations throughout the space. The positioning of personnel revealed who supported Hamilton's approach and who appeared uncomfortable with the proceedings. Her analytical training was taking over despite her efforts to remain invisible. "As you know," Hamilton continued, addressing the Pentagon officials directly, "custodial and maintenance staff necessarily have access to classified work areas. The question we must ask is, what happens when these individuals are exposed to information beyond their comprehension or security clearance?" Several Pentagon officials exchanged glances. This was clearly not the standard facility inspection they had expected, but Hamilton's authority within the intelligence community gave his presentation credibility. To demonstrate this concern practically, Hamilton smiled with barely concealed malicious intent, "I've asked our senior custodial staff member to participate in a brief intelligence assessment exercise. This will illustrate the importance of maintaining clear boundaries between qualified personnel and support staff." The room fell silent. Maria stopped cleaning, her hands gripping the mop handle as she processed the implications. Hamilton wasn't just planning humiliation. He was planning to film her failure in front of Pentagon officials, then broadcast it as proof that certain people lacked the intellectual capacity for intelligence work. Casey raised his smartphone, already recording. "This is going to be incredible content," he whispered to a colleague. "A cleaning lady trying to do intelligence analysis? It'll go viral within hours." Ben Kowalski stepped forward with obvious discomfort. "Sir, I'm not sure this is appropriate. Maria is an excellent employee who performs her duties professionally. There's no need to—" "Sergeant Kowalski," Hamilton's voice carried a warning that made Ben reluctantly step back. "I appreciate your concern for staff morale, but this demonstration serves important educational purposes. Our Pentagon visitors need to understand how we maintain security protocols." General Kane spoke for the first time. "Mr. Hamilton, what exactly are you proposing? This seems unusual for a facility inspection." Hamilton's confidence was absolute. "General, we're going to invite our custodial staff member to analyze some basic intelligence data and identify simple threat patterns. When she inevitably demonstrates her limitations, we'll have practical evidence of why certain positions require specific qualifications and security clearances." The cruelty was breathtaking. Hamilton wanted to film a middle-aged Latina cleaning woman failing at intelligence analysis, then use the footage to reinforce hierarchical boundaries and justify discrimination throughout the government intelligence community. Deputy Director Mitchell looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Hamilton, this employee hasn't consented to participate in your demonstration. Are we sure this is—" "Ma'am," Hamilton interrupted smoothly, "this is a direct order related to facility security protocols. All personnel are required to cooperate with Pentagon inspections and security assessments." Maria realized she was trapped. Refusing would provide Hamilton with evidence of insubordination, giving him grounds for immediate termination. Complying would subject her to public humiliation, designed to destroy her dignity and reinforce systemic discrimination against people like her. But Hamilton had made a critical error in his planning. He assumed that Maria Delgado was exactly what she appeared to be, an uneducated custodial worker with no understanding of the sophisticated operations occurring around her. "What exactly are you asking me to do, Mr. Hamilton?" Maria asked quietly, her voice carrying a subtle change in tone that Ben Kowalski immediately noticed. Hamilton's grin widened with predatory satisfaction. "Simple, Maria. we're going to show you some basic intelligence documents and ask you to identify potential security threats. Should be easy, right? After all, you've been exposed to classified information for 8 years. Let's see what you've learned. The room held its breath. Casey's camera captured every detail. Pentagon officials watched with growing discomfort as they realized they were about to witness systematic humiliation disguised as professional assessment. But Hamilton had no idea that he was about to challenge someone who had once commanded intelligence operations that protected national security at the highest levels. Someone who had spent 8 years accumulating evidence of his illegal activities while he conducted business around her, assuming she was too intellectually limited to understand what she was witnessing. Maria Delgado was done being invisible. Elena Santos was ready to emerge, and the room full of Pentagon officials was about to witness the resurrection of one of military intelligence's most capable analysts. The demonstration was about to begin, but not in the way Hamilton had planned. Hamilton moved to the presentation screen with theatrical confidence, activating a classified intelligence briefing that he had specifically selected for its complexity. The document appeared on screen, a multi-page threat assessment covering Eastern European weapons trafficking, complete with financial networks, shipping routes, and personnel identification charts that would challenge even experienced analysts. "Maria," Hamilton announced loudly, ensuring his voice carried to every corner of the briefing room, "I want you to examine this intelligence report and provide your assessment of the security threats it represents. Take your time. We understand this might be challenging for someone with your background." Casey Turner's camera captured every angle as Maria approached the presentation screen. The Pentagon officials watched with expressions ranging from professional curiosity to obvious discomfort at witnessing what appeared to be systematic humiliation disguised as professional evaluation. Deputy Director Mitchell shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable with the proceedings. "Mr. Hamilton, I'm not sure this employee has the proper security clearance to view classified threat assessments." "Ma'am," Hamilton replied smoothly, "this document has been sanitized for training purposes. Besides, our custodial staff necessarily sees classified materials during their daily cleaning routines. This demonstration will help us understand whether passive exposure creates any security risks." The document Hamilton had chosen was intentionally overwhelming. 17 pages of dense intelligence data involving multiple foreign agencies, complex financial transactions, and technical specifications that required years of training to interpret correctly. He expected Maria to glance at it briefly, admit her confusion, and provide him with footage of intellectual defeat that would justify his discriminatory attitudes. Maria stood before the screen, her eyes scanning the document with what appeared to be careful attention. But Hamilton missed the subtle changes in her posture, the straightening of her shoulders, the focused intensity of her gaze, and the way her breathing became more controlled and deliberate. "Well," Hamilton prompted after 30 seconds, his voice carrying obvious impatience, "can you identify any security concerns in this assessment?" Maria's response came in a voice that was subtly different from the quiet, deferential tone she had used for 8 years. Still soft, but carrying an undertone of precision that made Ben Kowalski's eyes widen with recognition. "Mr. Hamilton, are you asking me to provide a comprehensive threat analysis, or would you prefer a summary of the most critical security vulnerabilities revealed in this document?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Hamilton blinked, clearly not expecting such a specific and professional response. Several Pentagon officials leaned forward, suddenly more attentive to what they were witnessing. "Just tell us what you see," Hamilton said, his confidence beginning to waver. "Identify anything that seems important." Maria turned back to the screen, her eyes moving across the data with systematic precision. "This document details Operation Red Mercury, a weapons trafficking network operating through shell companies registered in Moldova, Belarus, and Ukraine. The financial trail shows approximately $89 million in transactions over 18 months, utilizing cryptocurrency exchanges and offshore banking facilities in the Cayman Islands." The room fell completely silent. General Kane straightened in his chair, his expression shifting from casual observation to intense focus. Deputy Director Mitchell pulled out her notebook, beginning to take careful notes. Hamilton stared at Maria in growing horror. The document on screen was indeed about Operation Red Mercury. But those specific details, the exact financial figures, the precise timeline, the specific countries involved, were classified at levels that required specialized clearance to access. "How do you—" Hamilton began, then stopped, realizing he was on dangerous ground. If Maria actually possessed this level of knowledge, his entire demonstration was backfiring catastrophically. But Maria was just beginning. The operation utilizes a procurement network that includes compromised officials in 3 different government agencies. Primary facilitators include personnel with access to military shipping manifests, procurement oversight positions, and cybersecurity administration. Casey Turner's camera captured Hamilton's face as the color drained from it. What was supposed to be a humiliating display of ignorance was becoming something entirely different. A demonstration of knowledge that no custodial worker should possess. "The most concerning aspect," Maria continued, her voice gaining confidence as Elena Santos began to emerge, "is that this network has been operating for over 8 years with minimal detection, suggesting insider knowledge of investigation protocols and security procedures." General Kane stood up abruptly. "Excuse me, but how exactly does a custodial employee have access to operational details about classified investigations?" Hamilton felt panic beginning to set in. This wasn't going according to plan. Maria wasn't supposed to know anything about classified operations, let alone provide detailed analysis that revealed her intimate knowledge of intelligence procedures. "She's probably just repeating things she's overheard," Hamilton said desperately, his voice rising. "Custodial staff are exposed to fragments of information. She's just regurgitating bits and pieces without understanding the context." Maria turned from the screen to face Hamilton directly, and for the first time in 8 years, she made sustained eye contact with the man who had tormented her. What he saw in her gaze should have been a warning. Not the confusion or fear he expected, but the cold analytical assessment of someone evaluating a threat. "Mr. Hamilton," Maria said quietly, "would you like me to continue with the threat assessment, or would you prefer that I explain how I know that this particular document was classified above your personal security clearance level?" The question landed like a bomb in the silent briefing room. Hamilton's mouth opened and closed without sound. Casey Turner's camera captured every moment of his growing panic. Deputy Director Mitchell stood up, her expression now deadly serious. "Ma'am, I need you to explain exactly how you have access to information about Operation Red Mercury. That operation is classified at the highest levels of government intelligence." Ben Kowalski watched from the back of the room, pieces of an 8-year puzzle finally falling into place. The way Maria listened to conversations, her systematic cleaning routes that maximized exposure to classified discussions, her careful attention to details that other custodial staff ignored. She hadn't been accidentally overhearing information. She had been systematically gathering intelligence. Maria looked around the room, taking in the faces of Pentagon officials who were now treating her as a potential security threat rather than a harmless cleaning lady. The moment of decision had arrived. She could retreat back into invisibility, claim ignorance, and hope to escape with her cover intact. Or she could finish what she had started 8 years ago and expose the corruption that had destroyed her career while continuing to threaten national security. "Deputy Director Mitchell," Maria said, her voice now carrying the crisp professionalism of someone accustomed to briefing senior military officials, "my name is not Maria Delgado. I am former senior analyst Elena Santos, Army Intelligence, and I have been conducting an 8-year investigation into the weapons trafficking network that destroyed my career and continues to operate within this facility." The transformation was complete. The invisible cleaning lady was gone, replaced by someone whose presence commanded immediate attention and respect from every Pentagon official in the room. Hamilton staggered backward, his world collapsing in real time as Casey Turner's camera captured every moment for posterity. The briefing room erupted in controlled chaos as the magnitude of Maria's revelation struck every person present. Deputy Director Mitchell immediately activated her secure communication device, while General Kane moved to a position where he could observe both Maria and the exits simultaneously. The Pentagon officials who had arrived expecting a routine facility inspection suddenly found themselves at the center of what could be the biggest intelligence scandal in decades. "Security, lock down this facility immediately," Mitchell commanded into her device. "We have a potential intelligence breach situation requiring immediate containment protocols." Hamilton stood frozen, his face cycling through disbelief, terror, and desperate calculation. Everything he had built, every illegal operation he had facilitated, every corrupt relationship he had maintained, All of it was potentially exposed by someone he had considered insignificant for 8 years. "That's impossible," Hamilton whispered, but his voice carried no conviction. "Elena Santos was discharged for treason. She's been missing for 8 years. This woman is just a cleaning lady trying to—" "Mr. Hamilton," General Kane interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command situations. "I suggest you remain silent until we can verify these claims." "Ma'am," he addressed Maria directly, "I need you to provide immediate verification of your identity and explain how you gained access to classified information about Operation Red Mercury." Maria Elena stood straighter, her transformation complete. 8 years of forced invisibility had ended, and the intelligence analyst who had once briefed Pentagon officials was fully present in the room. "General Kane, my Army Intelligence Service number was 847924156. I served as Senior Analyst in the Counterintelligence Division from 2014 to 2016, specializing in weapons trafficking and foreign procurement networks. I was discharged under suspicious circumstances after discovering that Colonel Mitchell Carver was facilitating illegal weapons sales through defense contractor relationships." The name Colonel Mitchell Carver hit the room like a physical blow. Several Pentagon officials exchanged meaningful glances. They recognized the name from classified investigations and corruption scandals that had been quietly buried years earlier. Deputy Director Mitchell pulled up Elena's service record on her secure tablet, cross-referencing her stated service number with classified personnel databases. After 90 seconds of verification, she looked up with an expression of growing amazement. Service record confirmed. Senior Analyst Elena Santos specialized in threat assessment and financial intelligence. Decorated service record, multiple commendations for exceptional analytical work. Mitchell paused, reviewing additional information. Discharged in 2016 following allegations of unauthorized information sharing. Case file shows investigation was closed due to insufficient evidence. "Because the evidence was fabricated," Elena said firmly. "Colonel Carver framed me when I discovered his weapons trafficking operation. I've spent 8 years gathering proof of the corruption that destroyed my career and continues to compromise national security." Casey Turner, still recording despite the chaos around him, whispered into his camera, "This is insane. I came here to film a cleaning lady getting humiliated, and instead I'm documenting the biggest intelligence story of the decade." Ben Kowalski approached Elena with a mixture of awe and vindication. "I knew something was different about you. The way you listened, the way you moved through the facility. You weren't just cleaning, you were conducting surveillance." "For 8 years," Elena confirmed. "Mr. Hamilton has been operating the same weapons trafficking network that his father established. I've documented every transaction, every corrupt official, every security breach. The intelligence he just asked me to analyze, that operation is still active, facilitated by personnel in this building." Hamilton finally found his voice, desperation making him reckless. "She's lying. This is an elaborate hoax. She's probably a foreign agent trying to discredit American intelligence operations." Elena turned to face Hamilton with the calm confidence of someone who held all the cards. "Trevor, would you like me to recite the conversation you had yesterday at 3:47 p.m. with someone you called Phoenix regarding the diversion of radar components worth $47 million? Or should I start with your discussion of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands?" The specificity of her knowledge struck Hamilton like a physical blow. Those conversations had taken place in his private office, using encrypted communications that he believed were completely secure. The idea that someone had been listening, recording, and analyzing his every illegal transaction for years was a nightmare beyond his comprehension. General Kane stepped forward, his expression deadly serious. "Ms. Santos, are you claiming to have evidence of ongoing weapons trafficking operations within this facility?" "Not claiming, General, stating. I have documented evidence of a corruption network that has stolen over $500 million in military equipment over 8 years. The network includes personnel in Pentagon procurement, defense contractors, and foreign buyers. Mr. Hamilton is a key facilitator, using his position to provide shipping schedules, security protocols, and cover for equipment diversions." Deputy Director Mitchell was furiously taking notes while coordinating with security personnel through her communication device. "Ms. Santos, we're going to need comprehensive debriefing of everything you know. If your allegations are accurate, we're looking at systematic compromise of national security at the highest levels. The allegations are accurate, Elena replied. And General Kane, you should know that the equipment discussed in yesterday's Operation Red Mercury briefing, half of it was diverted through Mr. Hamilton's network 6 months ago. The weapons your intelligence analysts believe are securing Allied operations in Eastern Europe are actually being sold to the highest bidders. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Not only was Hamilton facilitating ongoing theft, but the intelligence community had been unknowingly operating with compromised information about their own security operations. Casey Turner's livestream, which he had automatically activated when the situation became extraordinary, now had over 200,000 viewers watching the real-time collapse of a major intelligence scandal. Comments poured in from military personnel around the world who recognized Elena Santos's name and were sharing their own memories of her legendary analytical capabilities. "Sir," Casey whispered to General Kane, "my stream has gone viral. The whole world is watching this." Hamilton looked around the room in growing panic, realizing that his carefully planned humiliation had transformed into his complete professional and personal destruction, broadcast live to hundreds of thousands of viewers. Elena addressed the Pentagon officials with the crisp professionalism that had once made her one of the military's most respected analysts. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed today is just the beginning. Mr. Hamilton's network has compromised military readiness, betrayed national security, and stolen hundreds of millions in taxpayer resources. I have 8 years of evidence that will dismantle this entire operation and expose every corrupt official involved." She paused, looking directly at Hamilton. "The invisible woman you've been conducting illegal business around for 8 years just became your worst nightmare." The demonstration Hamilton had planned to reinforce hierarchical boundaries had instead demolished his entire criminal enterprise, with every moment documented for the world to see. Within minutes of Elena's revelation, the briefing room had transformed into an active intelligence operations center. Deputy Director Mitchell coordinated with FBI cybercrime units, while General Kane established secure communication channels with Pentagon security divisions. The routine facility inspection had become a real-time investigation into one of the largest military corruption scandals in American history. "Ms. Santos," Deputy Director Mitchell said, her tablet displaying Elena's complete service record, "I need you to provide a comprehensive overview of the evidence you've gathered. We're treating this as a Category 1 security breach, requiring immediate action." Elena moved to the presentation screen with the confidence of someone returning to her natural environment. 8 years of documentation has provided me with complete intelligence on a corruption network that extends from this facility to the Pentagon, Congress, and multiple defense contractors. She gestured to the Operation Red Mercury document that Hamilton had used for his humiliation attempt. "This assessment, which Mr. Hamilton selected to demonstrate my supposed intellectual limitations, actually describes a weapons trafficking operation that his network has been facilitating for 18 months. The $89 million in transactions mentioned here, those funds went directly through accounts controlled by Apex Defense Solutions, the same company that employed Colonel Mitchell Carver after his retirement." General Kane leaned forward intently. "Are you saying that Hamilton's father was involved in the original corruption that led to your discharge?" "Colonel Carver didn't just participate in the corruption, General, he created it. When I discovered the weapons trafficking operation in 2016, Carver used his position to frame me for the very crimes he was committing. The evidence used to destroy my career was fabricated to protect a conspiracy that has continued operating for 8 additional years." Elena's photographic memory began displaying its full power as she recited specific details with devastating precision. February 15, 2023, 10:32 a.m. Mr. Hamilton coordinated with Rebecca Sterling in Pentagon procurement to falsify destruction reports for advanced radar systems worth $23 million. The equipment was diverted through Meridian shipping to buyers in Eastern Europe. March 8, 2023, 2:15 p.m., Hamilton received confirmation that Congressman William Hayes had successfully prevented Oversight Committee investigation into suspicious procurement patterns. Payment for Hayes's cooperation was $2.3 million transferred through Cayman Island shell companies. April 22, 2023, 4:45 p.m., General Patricia Morse approved fictional training exercises that provided cover for equipment diversions totaling $67 million. Morse received direct payments and was promised a lucrative consulting position with Apex Defense Solutions upon retirement. Each revelation struck the room like hammer blows. Elena wasn't just exposing isolated incidents. She was dismantling an entire network of corruption that reached the highest levels of military and political leadership. Casey Turner's livestream had exploded to over 500,000 viewers, with major news networks now picking up the feed. Comments poured in from military personnel worldwide who were sharing their own experiences with corruption and recognizing Elena Santos as a legendary figure in intelligence circles. "This is unprecedented," Casey whispered to his audience. "We're watching the live exposure of a massive government conspiracy by someone who's been gathering evidence for 8 years while pretending to be a cleaning lady." Hamilton, who had remained silent during Elena's systematic destruction of his network, finally spoke with desperate fury. "You can't prove any of this. These are just accusations from someone who was discharged for treason." Elena turned to face Hamilton with the calm authority of someone holding absolute evidence. "Trevor, would you like me to recite the bank account numbers for your offshore holdings? Or should I provide the exact specifications of the weapons you discussed diverting next week during the Pentagon official's visit?" The specificity of her knowledge was devastating. Hamilton's face went completely white as he realized that every private conversation, every encrypted communication, every supposedly secure transaction had been monitored and recorded by someone with perfect memory. "The weapons diversion scheduled for next week," Elena continued, addressing the Pentagon officials, "involves advanced cybersecurity equipment worth $127 million. Mr. Hamilton planned to use today's demonstration to establish his authority with you, ensuring your confidence in his operational oversight. Your approval of his shipping schedules would have facilitated the largest theft in his network's history." Deputy Director Mitchell was coordinating with multiple agencies through her secure communications. FBI Financial Crimes Division is already freezing accounts associated with Apex Defense Solutions. Pentagon Security is conducting simultaneous raids on facilities connected to the trafficking network. General Kane stood up, his expression reflecting the gravity of the situation. "Ms. Santos, your evidence is resulting in real-time arrests of military personnel and government officials. The scope of this conspiracy appears to extend far beyond what we initially understood." Elena nodded grimly. "General, this network has compromised military readiness for 8 years. Equipment that Pentagon officials believe is protecting American forces overseas has actually been sold to potential adversaries. Foreign intelligence services have gained access to advanced American military technology through Hamilton's trafficking operation. The human cost is equally devastating," Elena continued. 7 military intelligence analysts who discovered evidence of this corruption have had their careers destroyed through fabricated allegations. 2 committed suicide after being falsely accused of treason. This network doesn't just steal equipment, it systematically destroys anyone who threatens to expose the truth. Ben Kowalski approached Elena with obvious awe. "Ma'am, I need to apologize. I knew you were different, but I never imagined. You've been conducting the most important intelligence operation in decades, while the rest of us treated you like you were invisible." "Ben, that invisibility was my greatest asset," Elena replied. "People say things around custodial staff that they would never reveal to intelligence analysts." Hamilton's arrogance led him to conduct illegal business around someone he considered intellectually inferior. His prejudice became his downfall. The investigation was expanding exponentially. Elena's evidence had provided law enforcement with a roadmap to dismantle an entire corruption network. Phone calls were being made to arrest officials across multiple states. Bank accounts were being frozen, and defense contractors were being raided simultaneously. Hamilton made one final desperate attempt to salvage his situation. "Even if any of this is true, you conducted unauthorized surveillance for 8 years. You violated security protocols, engaged in illegal intelligence gathering, and—" "I gathered evidence of treason," Elena interrupted firmly. "Every piece of information I collected involved crimes against national security. I documented corruption that your father's network thought they had successfully buried. The only illegal activity in this room is yours." Casey Turner's stream had reached over 1 million viewers, with hashtag Elena Santos and hashtag Invisible Hero trending globally. Military personnel from around the world were sharing stories of Elena's legendary intelligence capabilities and expressing outrage over the corruption that had destroyed her career. The woman who had spent 8 years as an invisible cleaning lady had become the most visible threat to government corruption in American history. And she was just getting started. The Northpoint Security Complex had become the epicenter of the most significant intelligence investigation in decades. Within 2 hours of Elena's revelation, federal agents were executing coordinated raids across 12 states, while financial investigators traced the corruption network's money trail through international banking systems. Director General Victoria Kane arrived at the facility with a full investigative team from the Pentagon's Inspector General Office. Unlike the routine visit Hamilton had expected, this was now a comprehensive criminal investigation that would reshape military intelligence oversight for years to come. "Miss Santos," Director Kane said as she entered the briefing room, "I need to personally apologize on behalf of the United States military. The injustice you suffered 8 years ago represents a complete failure of our protection systems for personnel reporting corruption." Elena stood straighter, the recognition from senior leadership validating 8 years of patient investigation. "Director Kane, I'm honored to finally meet you. Your work on intelligence reform has been exemplary, though you've been working within a system that was compromised from the beginning." "That changes today," Kane replied firmly. "Based on your evidence, we're implementing immediate reforms to whistleblower protection protocols, corruption investigation procedures, and oversight accountability measures. Your case will become the foundation for preventing future injustices." Casey Turner's livestream continued broadcasting to over 1.5 million viewers worldwide, with major news networks now providing continuous coverage of what media outlets were calling the Elena Santos revelation. Comments poured in from military personnel sharing their own experiences with corruption and celebrating Elena's vindication. "Breaking news from our stream," Casey announced to his global audience. "FBI agents have just arrested Rebecca Sterling at the Pentagon. General Patricia Morse has been taken into custody at her home in Virginia. The entire corruption network is being dismantled in real time." Hamilton sat in the corner of the briefing room under federal custody. His world completely collapsed. The man who had spent years tormenting employees he considered beneath him was now facing treason charges that could result in life imprisonment. His family's wealth, built on 8 years of stolen military equipment, was being systematically seized by federal investigators. Ben Kowalski approached Elena with profound respect. "Ma'am, I need to ask, how did you maintain your sanity through 8 years of hiding? Watching corruption, being treated as invisible, knowing you could expose everything but having to wait for the right moment?" Elena's response carried the wisdom of someone who had endured systematic injustice while maintaining absolute faith in eventual truth. "Ben, I survived by remembering that justice delayed is not necessarily justice denied. Every day I gathered more evidence, documented more crimes, and prepared for the moment when the truth could no longer be suppressed." "The hardest part," Elena continued, "was watching other innocent people suffer while I waited. 7 analysts had their careers destroyed by this network. 2 committed suicide. Every day I didn't act, more people were hurt. But I also knew that premature exposure would allow the corruption to continue. I needed irrefutable evidence that would dismantle the entire network, not just punish individual participants." Director Kane was coordinating with multiple agencies through secure communications. "Ms. Santos, preliminary analysis of your evidence has identified corruption reaching into 23 different military installations, 8 defense contractors, and 15 congressional offices. The scope of this conspiracy exceeds our worst projections." "Director, that's just the beginning," Elena replied. "The financial records I've memorized show connections to foreign intelligence services, terrorist organizations, and criminal networks that have been purchasing American military technology for years. This isn't just theft. It's systematic compromise of national security." The investigation was revealing the true magnitude of damage caused by Hamilton's network. Advanced weapon systems that Pentagon officials believed were protecting American forces had actually been sold to potential enemies. Intelligence capabilities that military planners relied upon had been compromised by criminal networks with access to classified technology. "Ma'am," General Kane interjected, "we need to discuss your future. Your intelligence capabilities, demonstrated analytical skills, and proven dedication to national security make you invaluable to military intelligence operations. I'm authorized to offer you immediate reinstatement to active duty with full rank restoration and compensation for 8 years of lost career advancement." Elena considered the offer carefully. "General, I'm honored by your confidence, but I want to propose something different. Instead of returning to traditional intelligence work, I'd like to establish a new division specifically focused on investigating internal corruption and protecting personnel who report criminal activity. The Santos Division, Director Kane said immediately, dedicated to ensuring that what happened to you never happens to anyone else. Exactly. We need systematic reforms that make corruption impossible to hide, that protect people who risk their careers to expose criminal activity, and that ensure justice is swift and comprehensive when crimes are discovered. Casey Turner captured the emotional moment as Elena outlined her vision for reform. Folks watching around the world were witnessing the birth of a new era in military justice. Elena Santos isn't just exposing corruption. She's creating the systems to prevent it permanently. Hamilton, listening from his federal custody, finally understood the full scope of his miscalculation. His planned humiliation of a cleaning lady had instead created a whistleblower protection advocate whose reforms would prevent future corruption networks from operating. His cruelty had spawned the very reforms that would make his type of corruption impossible. "Mr. Hamilton," Elena said, addressing him directly for the first time since his arrest, 8 years ago your father destroyed my career to protect his criminal enterprise. Today, your arrogance has exposed that entire network and created the foundations for military justice reform. Sometimes the best revenge is building something better from the ashes of what criminals destroyed. The facility buzzed with activity as federal agents continued their investigation. Evidence was being cataloged, witnesses were being interviewed, and the scope of corruption was being documented for what would become the largest military justice prosecution in American history. Elena stood in the center of it all, no longer invisible, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. The woman who had cleaned toilets for 8 years while memorizing classified conversations had become the architect of military justice reform. Her transformation was complete, but her work was just beginning. The invisible woman had become the most visible advocate for truth, justice, and accountability in government service. And the world was watching every moment of her vindication. 6 months after the revelation that shook the intelligence community, Elena Santos stood in her new office at the Pentagon, overlooking the courtyard, where policies that had once enabled her destruction were now being systematically reformed under her direct supervision. The nameplate on her door read, "Director, Santos Division, Internal Integrity and Whistleblower Protection," a position created specifically to ensure that corruption could never again operate in the shadows of American military intelligence. The Santos Division had already processed over 150 cases of suspected military corruption, achieving justice for 89 personnel who had faced retaliation for reporting criminal activity. Elena's methodical approach to investigation, combined with her understanding of how corruption networks operated, had made her division the most effective internal affairs operation in military history. "Director Santos," her assistant announced through the intercom, "your 2 p.m. appointment is here." Former Staff Sergeant Jennifer Chen, the analyst who was falsely accused of equipment sabotage. "Send her in," Elena replied, remembering her own feelings of desperation 8 years earlier when her career had been systematically destroyed by corrupt officials. Staff Sergeant Chen entered nervously, a young Korean-American intelligence analyst whose career had been nearly destroyed by false allegations from a superior officer who resented her rapid advancement and technical expertise. The parallel to Elena's own experience was painfully clear. "Sergeant Chen, please sit," Elena said warmly. "I've reviewed your case thoroughly. The evidence clearly demonstrates that Major Stevens fabricated sabotage allegations to cover his own security breaches while targeting you for discrimination." Chen's eyes filled with tears. "Ma'am, I just want to serve my country. I never imagined that reporting legitimate security concerns would result in my career being destroyed." "Sergeant, Major Stevens has been court-martialed and dismissed from service. Your record is being completely expunged, and you're being reassigned to the Pentagon's Advanced Cybersecurity Division with a promotion to Technical Sergeant. More importantly, the security vulnerabilities you identified have been addressed, potentially preventing foreign intelligence breaches that could have compromised national security." The transformation was remarkable. Elena had evolved from victim to protector, ensuring that other dedicated service members would never endure the injustice she had suffered. Her division had become a beacon of hope for military personnel who faced retaliation for maintaining their integrity. Casey Turner, whose viral documentation of Elena's revelation had launched his career as an investigative journalist, arrived for his monthly interview about ongoing corruption investigations. His original video had been viewed over 50 million times, inspiring similar whistleblower revelations across multiple government agencies. Director Santos, Casey began, setting up his professional camera equipment. 6 months after your revelation, what's the status of the Hamilton Corruption Network prosecution? Elena's expression became more serious as she addressed the scope of justice that had followed her exposure. Casey, the prosecution has exceeded our initial projections. Trevor Hamilton received a 25-year sentence for treason, conspiracy, and theft of government property. His network's assets totaling over $400 million have been recovered and returned to military procurement budgets. The investigation expanded far beyond Hamilton's immediate operation. Rebecca Sterling received 20 years for her role in Pentagon procurement corruption. General Patricia Morse was sentenced to 15 years and stripped of all military honors. Congressman William Hayes resigned in disgrace and faces federal charges for accepting bribes in exchange for preventing oversight investigations. Casey leaned forward intently. What about the broader impact? How has your experience changed military culture? The Santis protocols have been implemented across all military intelligence operations, Elena explained. These include mandatory rotation of procurement oversight personnel, independent investigation channels for corruption allegations, and comprehensive protection for personnel who report criminal activity. Most importantly, we've established that retaliation against whistleblowers will result in automatic federal prosecution. The changes were revolutionary. Elena's 8 years of patient evidence gathering had not only exposed massive corruption, but had created systematic reforms that made similar criminal networks nearly impossible to operate undetected. Director Casey continued, I have to ask about the personal cost. 8 years of hiding your identity, being treated as invisible, enduring systematic humiliation. How do you process that experience? Elena was quiet for a moment, considering the weight of her journey from destruction to vindication. Casey, those 8 years taught me that integrity isn't about being recognized or rewarded. It's about maintaining your principles when no one is watching and continuing to serve your country, even when that country has failed you. The humiliation I endured from people like Hamilton was painful, but it also revealed the casual cruelty that enables corruption to flourish. When people are comfortable treating others as disposable, they lose the moral foundation necessary for public service. Her response carried the wisdom of someone who had endured systematic injustice while maintaining absolute faith in eventual truth and reform. What message do you have for other service members who might be facing similar situations? Never underestimate the power of patient truth-telling, Elena replied firmly. Document everything. Maintain your integrity. And remember that justice delayed is not necessarily justice denied. Sometimes the most effective way to fight corruption is to become excellent at what they claim you cannot do. Ben Kowalski, now promoted to Director of Facility Operations, knocked and entered. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something I thought you should see. He handed Elena a letter bearing the seal of the President of the United States. As she read, her expression shifted to one of profound emotion. Casey, Elena said quietly, the President has awarded me the Presidential Medal of Freedom for extraordinary courage in exposing military corruption and for exemplifying the highest ideals of public service under the most difficult circumstances. The recognition was overwhelming. Elena Santos had evolved from a destroyed intelligence analyst, through 8 years as an invisible cleaning lady, to become one of the most honored public servants in American history. The citation, Elena continued reading, states that my investigation prevented hundreds of millions in additional theft, protected national security from systematic compromise, and established the foundation for military justice reform that will protect future generations of service members. Casey captured the emotional moment as Elena processed the magnitude of recognition she was receiving from the highest levels of government. Director Santos, Casey said, you've demonstrated that sometimes the people society overlooks are the ones with the power to change everything. Your story has inspired whistleblowers across the government to come forward with evidence of corruption they've been afraid to report. Elena looked out her window at the Pentagon courtyard, where military personnel moved with the confidence that comes from serving in an institution committed to integrity and accountability. Casey, the invisible woman, is gone forever. In her place stands someone committed to ensuring that courage is rewarded, truth is protected, and that no one who serves their country with integrity will ever again be forced to hide in plain sight. The transformation was complete, but But Elena Santos's work of building a more just and accountable military was just beginning. 2 years after her revelation transformed military intelligence, Elena Santos had become more than a government reformer. She had evolved into a symbol of resilience that inspired people far beyond military circles. The Elena Santos Foundation, established with recovered funds from the Hamilton Corruption Network, had grown into the nation's most effective advocate for whistleblower protection and institutional accountability. Director Santos, her foundation coordinator, announced, "We have 3 new cases this week that require your personal attention. A NASA engineer reporting safety cover-ups, a VA hospital administrator documenting patient care fraud, and a State Department analyst who discovered diplomatic corruption." Elena reviewed the cases with the systematic attention that had made her legendary in intelligence circles. Each represented someone risking their career to expose wrongdoing, facing the same impossible choice she had confronted 8 years earlier: remain silent and complicit, or speak truth and face destruction. Schedule comprehensive consultations for all 3, Elena instructed. Priority focus on evidence documentation, legal protection strategies, and psychological support. No one should face retaliation alone. The foundation operated on principles Elena had developed through her own experience: methodical evidence gathering, comprehensive legal protection, and unwavering support for individuals challenging corrupt systems. In 2 years, they had protected over 300 whistleblowers and achieved justice in cases involving billions of dollars in government fraud. Casey Turner arrived for his weekly documentary interview, part of an ongoing series that had made him one of America's most respected investigative journalists. His coverage of Elena's story had evolved into comprehensive reporting on government accountability that had won multiple journalism awards. Director Santos, Casey began, adjusting his professional equipment, "Your foundation just achieved its biggest victory with the Department of Energy corruption case. Can you walk us through how a single custodial worker's evidence exposed nuclear security fraud?" Elena smiled, recognizing the parallel to her own story. Marcus Williams worked as a maintenance technician at a nuclear facility for 12 years. Like me, he was considered invisible by the officials conducting illegal business around him. He documented safety violations, equipment fraud, and security compromises that totaled over $200 million in stolen taxpayer funds. The key difference, Elena continued, is that Marcus didn't have to wait 8 years for justice. The Santos Foundation provided him with legal protection, evidence analysis support, and media coverage that prevented retaliation. Within 6 months, 15 officials were arrested, and the entire facility's security was reformed. Casey leaned forward with interest. "How has your approach changed the dynamics for potential whistleblowers?" "Fundamentally," Elena replied. Previously, reporting corruption was a career-ending decision that individuals faced alone. Now, we provide comprehensive support that makes truth-telling safer and more effective. People know they have backup legal protection and institutional support for doing the right thing. The foundation had revolutionized whistleblower protection by creating a network of legal experts, investigative journalists, and reform advocates who could mobilize immediately when someone reported institutional corruption. Elena's experience had taught her that isolated individuals couldn't fight corrupt systems alone. They needed organized, professional support. "What about the personal impact on you?" Casey asked. "You've become one of the most recognizable advocates for government accountability in the country. How do you handle that transformation from invisible to internationally visible?" Elena paused thoughtfully. "Casey, visibility brings responsibility. Every interview I give, every case our foundation handles, every reform we advocate for, it all matters because people are watching. Those 8 years of invisibility taught me that influence should be used to protect people who don't have a voice. The most rewarding aspect is hearing from military personnel who tell me they feel safer reporting problems because they know the Santos Division exists. We've created an environment where integrity is protected rather than punished." Ben Kowalski, now Elena's deputy director at the foundation, entered with urgent news. "Elena, we just received confirmation that the congressional legislation is moving forward. The Santos Whistleblower Protection Act passed committee review and is heading for a full Senate vote. The legislation represented Elena's vision made law: comprehensive protection for government employees who reported corruption, automatic investigation protocols for retaliation claims, and criminal penalties for officials who targeted whistleblowers. If passed, it would create the strongest institutional protections for truth-tellers in American history." "Ben, "This represents everything we've worked toward," Elena said with evident emotion. "Legal protections that could have prevented my 8 years of hiding. Systematic investigation procedures that would have exposed Hamilton's corruption immediately. And accountability measures that make retaliation against honest employees a federal crime." Casey captured the moment as Elena reflected on the magnitude of change her courage had initiated. Folks watching around the world were witnessing the culmination of Elena Santos's transformation from victim to reformer. Her story has literally changed the law. As evening approached, Elena performed her daily ritual, reviewing cases, analyzing evidence, and coordinating support for people facing the same impossible choices she had confronted. But now, instead of hiding in isolation, she worked with a team of dedicated professionals committed to protecting institutional integrity. "Director," her assistant announced, "you have a call from Staff Sergeant Chen. She wanted to update you on her cybersecurity work." Elena took the call with genuine warmth. Jennifer Chen had become one of the Pentagon's most valuable cybersecurity analysts, her career flourishing under the protection Elena's reforms had created. "Ma'am," Chen's voice carried obvious gratitude, "I wanted you to know that the security protocols I identified have prevented 3 major foreign intelligence breaches this month. The work I'm able to do now, because you protected my ability to serve with integrity, is directly protecting national security." The conversation reminded Elena why her 8 years of patient investigation had been worthwhile. Every person protected from retaliation, every corrupt official prosecuted, every reform implemented, all of it contributed to a more accountable and effective government. As Elena prepared to leave her office, she looked at the photograph on her desk, Maria Delgado pushing a cleaning cart through Northpoint Security Complex, invisible and underestimated. Next to it sat another photograph, Elena Santos receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom, surrounded by military leaders and government officials who now understood that excellence could emerge from the most unexpected places. The invisible woman had become the most visible advocate for truth in government. Her story continued to inspire people worldwide who faced impossible choices between silence and speaking truth to power. And every day, Elena Santos proved that sometimes the most profound change comes from people who refuse to surrender their integrity, even when the entire world treats them as disposable. 5 years after the revelation that transformed American intelligence, Elena Santos stood once again in the corridors of Northpoint Security Complex, but this time as the invited keynote speaker for the facility's annual Ethics and Accountability Conference. The same hallways where she had once pushed a cleaning cart while being systematically ignored were now lined with personnel who recognized her as one of the most important figures in modern military justice. The main briefing room had been renamed the Elena Santos Memorial Hall, not because she had died, but because it memorialized the death of institutional corruption and the birth of systematic accountability. A bronze plaque near the entrance read, "In this room on November 15th, courage spoke truth to power and changed everything." Ladies and gentlemen, the facility commander announced to an audience of over 500 military personnel, intelligence analysts, and government officials, "It is my honor to introduce Director Elena Santos, whose courage transformed not just our facility, but our entire approach to institutional integrity." Elena approached the podium where Trevor Hamilton had once planned her humiliation, reflecting on the journey from Maria Delgado to her current role as America's most respected advocate for government accountability. The irony was perfect. The room where corruption had plotted her destruction had become the place where integrity was celebrated and protected. 5 years ago, Elena began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned respect through extraordinary courage, "I stood in this same room as an invisible cleaning lady, about to be humiliated by officials who believed that certain people could be dismissed because of their apparent status." The audience listened with rapt attention as Elena continued. What those officials didn't understand was that invisibility can be a powerful tool for truth-telling. When people believe you don't matter, they reveal who they really are. Casey Turner, now a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist, captured Elena's speech with the same camera he had used to document her original revelation. His documentary series about government corruption had become required viewing in journalism schools worldwide, and his footage of Elena's transformation remained one of the most powerful examples of citizen journalism in American history. The Santos protocols, Elena explained to the audience, were born from a simple understanding: institutional corruption thrives when honest people are isolated and afraid. Our reforms ensure that truth-tellers receive immediate protection, comprehensive support, and systematic investigation of their allegations. The impact of Elena's work had exceeded every projection. The Santos Division had investigated over 1,200 cases of military corruption, achieving justice in 847 instances and recovering over $2.8 billion in stolen taxpayer funds. More importantly, the division had created a culture where reporting corruption was seen as patriotic duty rather than career suicide. "Today I want to share the latest victory," Elena announced, her voice carrying obvious pride. The Santos Whistleblower Protection Act was signed into law last week, creating the strongest institutional protections for truth-tellers in American history. What happened to me, 8 years of hiding, career destruction, systematic retaliation, is now a federal crime punishable by mandatory prison sentences. The audience erupted in applause. The legislation represented the culmination of Elena's transformation from victim to reformer, creating legal protections that would shield future generations of government employees who chose courage over silence. Ben Kowalski, now Elena's closest colleague and co-director of the foundation, watched from the audience with obvious emotion. He had witnessed Elena's entire journey from invisible cleaning lady to internationally recognized advocate for justice. The woman who had once cleaned around his custodial equipment was now protecting thousands of people from the corruption that had nearly destroyed her. "I need to address something personal," Elena continued, her voice becoming more reflective. 8 years ago, Trevor Hamilton tried to prove that people like me, a middle-aged Latina woman, lacked the intellectual capacity for complex analytical work. His demonstration was designed to reinforce barriers and justify discrimination. What Hamilton didn't understand was that excellence cannot be permanently suppressed. When you tell someone they don't belong, you sometimes create exactly the person who will prove that everyone belongs if given the opportunity to demonstrate their worth. Elena gestured toward the back of the room, where a special section had been reserved for Elena Santos Foundation scholarship recipients, young people from diverse backgrounds who were pursuing careers in government service, intelligence analysis, and public accountability. "These students represent the future Hamilton tried to prevent," Elena said proudly. "They come from backgrounds that were once systematically excluded from government service. They've been told they don't belong, they're not smart enough, they don't have the right connections. Sound familiar?" The scholarship program had become one of Elena's most important initiatives, providing educational opportunities and mentorship for people who faced the same barriers she had encountered. Over 200 students had graduated from the program, entering government service with the tools and support necessary to maintain integrity while serving their country. "Today, I want to issue a challenge to everyone in this room," Elena announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had transformed personal injustice into systematic reform. "Look around you. Notice the people who seem invisible: the custodial staff, the maintenance workers, the administrative assistants, the support personnel who keep our institutions functioning. Remember that those people see everything, hear everything, and understand more than you might imagine. Treat them with respect, not because they might secretly be intelligence analysts, but because everyone deserves dignity, regardless of their apparent status." Elena's message resonated throughout the audience as people reflected on their own assumptions about status, capability, and worth. "Excellence exists everywhere," Elena continued. "Sometimes it's hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Sometimes it's being systematically suppressed by people who confuse privilege with competence. Sometimes it's cleaning toilets while memorizing classified conversations, gathering evidence that will eventually transform everything." As Elena concluded her speech, the audience rose in thunderous applause that echoed through the facility for several minutes. But the real impact was deeper, in the changed attitudes, reformed policies, and protected individuals who would never face the isolation and injustice Elena had endured. Casey Turner ended his documentation with words that would be quoted for decades. "5 years ago, in this same room, we witnessed the resurrection of Elena Santos from the ashes of Maria Delgado. Today we've seen the complete transformation of how America protects truth-tellers and punishes corruption." Elena left Northpoint Security Complex knowing that her work was far from finished, but confident that the foundation she had built would continue protecting people who chose courage over comfort, truth over silence, and integrity over personal safety. The invisible woman was gone forever, replaced by someone whose visibility ensured that others would never again be forced to hide their excellence or compromise their principles. Elena Santos had proven that sometimes the most powerful force for justice is someone who refuses to accept that they don't matter, even when the entire world treats them as if they don't exist. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.